You ever notice how school keeps telling you it's about preparing you for life, but somehow life never shows up for class? They tell you it's about education, knowledge, unlocking your potential, and all those warm fuzzy words that sound like they were written by a greeting card company on a sugar rush. But the real show, the real act, it's about training you to stand in line, nod politely, and pretend to care about things that don't even matter once you leave the parking lot. School is like a magician's trick. You're supposed to watch the shiny chalkboard, while the real lesson is happening behind the curtain. And the lesson isn't algebra or history, it's how to sit quietly and not drool on the desk while someone explains what photosynthesis is for the 5th time. Think about it. From the first day you walk in, they hand you a schedule that looks like a prison itinerary and a list of rules longer than the phone book. Don't run, don't shout, don't chew gum, don't breathe funny. Every bell tells you when to start, when to stop, when to eat, when to sit, and when to pretend you're not bored out of your skull. You're not learning about freedom or curiosity. You're learning how to follow instructions without asking too many questions. They don't call it training for obedience. They call it discipline. Sounds nicer that way, like a fancy cologne. Discipline, the sweet scent of conformity, and those desks. What a piece of comedy furniture! Little wooden boxes designed to keep you uncomfortable just long enough to memorize the state capitals. They're not meant for learning. They're meant for reminding you that comfort is a privilege. Sit down, stay still, and don't fidget. They act like wiggling in your seat is a national emergency. If you can sit perfectly still for 45 minutes, congratulations. You're ready for a lifetime of meetings where people talk about things nobody actually cares about. That's the hidden curriculum. It's not math or grammar, it's endurance training for office chairs. Then there's the way they grade you. Oh, the grading system. One of the greatest comedy routines of all time. They take a bunch of kids, each with their own weird little brains, and they decide to measure them all with the same yardstick. It's like judging a fish on how well it can climb a tree. But instead of laughing at the absurdity, we all play along. You get a letter, maybe an A, maybe a C, and that single letter is supposed to summarize the entire swirling mess of your personality and effort. Here's a B, kid. This is who you are now, forever, like a permanent tattoo made of paperwork. And the tests, you cram a month's worth of facts into your head, facts you'll forget faster than your locker combination, just so you can regurgitate them on a piece of paper for someone with a red pen. They don't want you to understand, they want you to memorize. Understanding is dangerous. If you understand, you might start asking questions, and questions are like kryptonite to the system. They don't want little philosophers wandering the halls. They want reliable parrots, nice, obedient parrots who can squawk back the correct answer on command. What's the square root of 144? 12. Good bird, here's your cracker. And what about the subjects themselves? Half of what you're forced to learn has the life expectancy of a mayfly. When's the last time anyone asked you to recite the periodic table at a party? Nobody. But heaven forbid you forget it on a Tuesday morning in room 3B. Suddenly it's the end of civilization. Oh no, he doesn't know tungsten is W. Quick, someone call the guidance counselor before society collapses. They pretend this stuff is essential because admitting it's mostly filler would ruin the illusion. The illusion that every minute in that building is a sacred investment in your future. Meanwhile, the only thing you really master is the fine art of pretending to care while staring at a clock that refuses to move. Even the life lessons they try to sneak in are hilarious. They tell you to be independent, to think for yourself, while handing you worksheets that tell you exactly what to think. They give speeches about creativity right before giving you a standardized test with only one correct answer. They tell you everyone is unique and special, but then they rank you on a curve like tomatoes at a grocery store. Special tomatoes, sure, but only if you're the right shape and color, and don't forget the daily rituals. The pledge, the announcements, the same tired pep talks about responsibility and citizenship. It's like a cult meeting with better lighting. They dress it up as tradition, but it's really just practice for the real world where you'll be expected to show up on time, follow orders, and smile while doing it. They call it school spirit, but it's more like a rehearsal for corporate morale. Wear the colors, sing the song, clap at the right moments, and don't ask why the mascot looks like it escaped from a cereal box. Then there's the homework. Oh, the comedy gold of homework. Because clearly spending 7 hours in a building designed to drain your soul isn't enough, they send you home with extra suffering. Imagine if a job did that. Thanks for working all day. Here's a pile of meaningless tasks to ruin your evening. Don't forget to smile about it. Homework is the education system's way of saying, we own you even after the bell rings. It's like renting your brain by the hour, and through it all they keep telling you this is for your own good. We're preparing you for life. Really, life where? What life requires you to memorize the Pythagorean theorem on command? They say it builds character. You know what else builds character? Real life. Falling down, making mistakes, figuring things out. But you don't get a grade for that, so they pretend it doesn't count. Instead, they give you a gold star for coloring inside the lines and call it achievement. The funniest part is how seriously everyone takes it. Teachers, parents, administrators, like the fate of the universe depends on your ability to correctly identify the main export of Peru. They act like missing a homework assignment is the first step toward a life of crime. Relax, it's just a worksheet about fractions. Nobody's future hinges on whether you remembered to carry the one, but they need you to believe it's life or death, because fear is what keeps the circus running. Fear of failing, fear of standing out, fear of not getting into the right college so you can get the right job and spend the rest of your life sitting at another desk just like the one you started in. And that's the punchline, the big reveal. School isn't really about education. It's about conditioning, training you to show up on time, take orders, and believe that authority always knows best. It's a slow, methodical rehearsal for a world where you'll trade your time for a paycheck and your curiosity for a job description. They don't want thinkers, they want workers. Workers who can sit through long meetings without crying and fill out forms without asking why the forms exist. So when they tell you it's all for your own good, smile politely, because deep down you know the truth. School isn't preparation for life. It's preparation for more school, disguised as life. And once you see the joke, you can't unsee it. You ever notice how school is basically a long, running sitcom where the props never change and the punchlines are older than the desks? They've got all the elements of a classic comedy, a cast of characters, a predictable plot, and sound effects to cue your every move. The first sound effect is the bell. Ah yes, the sacred bell. It rings in the morning like a laugh track starting the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another thrilling episode of You're Late Again. That bell runs the place like a mafia boss with a stopwatch. It tells you when to eat, when to run, when to stop running, when to pretend you care about fractions, and when to finally escape, at least until the next day when the rerun starts all over again. And the bells don't just ring, they command. They don't suggest it might be a nice time to wander over to your next class. No, they demand movement. 1 second you're sitting peacefully, maybe halfway through doodling a masterpiece of a dragon eating your math homework, and then rang. You're suddenly part of a cattle drive. It's not education, it's Pavlov with a public address system. We hear that sound and instantly grab our books like trained performers waiting for their cue. You can almost hear a studio audience applauding as the hallway stampede begins. Then there are the grades. Oh, the grades. The little comedy trophies for successfully jumping through hoops you didn't set on fire, but might as well have. They hand out letters as if they're awarding Oscars for best performance in pretending to care. And the award for outstanding memorization of useless dates goes to this kid who stayed up all night and now smells like a coffee factory. Grades are like laugh meters. They don't measure intelligence. They measure how well you can play the game. Get an A and suddenly you're a genius. Get a C and suddenly you're a cautionary tale. Never mind that the kid with the A might be one sneeze away from forgetting everything. The joke is that these letters, these single characters of the alphabet, supposedly define your worth. You're not a person anymore, you're a vowel. And have you ever noticed how teachers return graded papers like magicians revealing a trick? They hand you a sheet with a giant red number at the top, like the results of some bizarre sporting event. You got an 86. Congratulations, you win today's episode of Guess What I Was Thinking. Because half the time, you don't even know what you were being graded on. Effort, neatness, psychic ability, who knows? But that red ink has power. One glance and your mood is set for the week. It's like emotional roulette with a side of paper cuts. Of course, every great comedy needs props, and school has a warehouse full. Think about the hall passes, those little slips of paper that somehow give you the magical right to move your own legs. Without that pass, you're basically a fugitive on the run from the hallway police. And the desks, those squeaky wooden relics with just enough legroom to make sure you'll develop a permanent cramp by lunch. The chairs sound like a rusty door every time you shift your weight, creating a background soundtrack of creaks and groans that would make a haunted house jealous. Then we've got the classic plot devices like pop quizzes. Nothing says comedy like a surprise test on material nobody remembers. You walk in expecting a normal day, maybe a movie in class if the teacher's feeling lazy, and suddenly, bam, out come the papers. It's a pop quiz, more like a slapstick ambush. Everyone's eyes go wide, pencils start trembling, and you can practically hear a rim shot in the distance. It's the academic version of slipping on a banana peel. Let's not forget the announcements over the loudspeaker. Every morning, like clockwork, that static filled voice crackles to life to tell you things you already know or things you'll forget before the second period. Attention students, today's lunch will be mystery meat again. Of course it will. Mystery meat is the unofficial mascot. Those announcements are like the cold open of a bad sitcom, necessary, but nobody's really listening. Half the time they sound like they're being read by someone trapped inside the ventilation system, and then there's the way every day is chopped into neat little episodes. First period, second period, third period. It's like channel surfing through subjects. You never get to settle into one thing before you're hustled off to the next, like a variety show with a very strict stage manager. Welcome to math. Stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion in English, and don't miss the emotional roller coaster of gym class. By the end of the day, you've covered 6 topics, learned maybe 1 fact, and mastered the art of speed. Walking with a backpack that could double as a small apartment, the comedy really peaks when you look at the awards and ceremonies. Honor roll assemblies, perfect attendance certificates, and those end-of-year banquets where they hand out plastic trophies that weigh less than the napkins. Perfect attendance is my favorite. They give you a prize for not getting sick. Congratulations, you successfully avoided bacteria for 9 months. It's like winning a medal for dodging invisible ninjas. And the honor roll, the honor roll. They act like it's a life-changing achievement, but all it really proves is that you've perfected the delicate balance of staying awake and kissing just enough teacher but to get the grades. Even gym class is its own comedy sketch. You spend all day sitting like a statue, and then suddenly they demand 30 minutes of intense physical activity in a room that smells like a wet sneaker convention. They toss out dodgeballs like grenades and call it team building. It's the only place where running for your life is considered good sportsmanship, and when it's over, they send you back to class drenched in sweat, as if anyone's going to absorb Shakespeare while smelling like a locker. The cafeteria is another masterpiece of absurdity. They give you exactly 2 minutes to stand in line, choose between 3 equally mysterious entrees, and inhale your food before the next bell yanks you away. It's like a culinary game show. Will you risk the meatloaf or play it safe with the square pizza? Either way, you lose, and yet they call it a lunch break, as if you're getting some kind of refreshing pause instead of a speed-eating contest with a side of indigestion. And what about those pep rallies? Now there's a laugh. They drag everyone into the gym, blast music loud enough to wake the dead, and demand that you scream with joy about a sport you might not even care about. It's not about school spirit. It's about testing the limits of your eardrums. They tell you it's fun, but it feels more like a live rehearsal for pretending to be enthusiastic at future office parties. The funniest part of all this is how normal it seems when you're in it. You don't question why a bell controls your movements or why a letter on a piece of paper can ruin your weekend. You just play along because everyone else is playing along. It's like being part of a long-running comedy where nobody realizes they're in the show. You memorize lines, hit your marks, and hope for a good review on the next report card. And when it's finally over, when you graduate and toss that cap in the air, they act like you've completed some heroic journey, but really you've just finished the longest-running joke in town. You've survived years of bells, grades, props, and punchlines, and now you're free to step into a world that's just a bigger, slightly more expensive version of the same comedy. The only difference is there's no bell to tell you when to leave. Here's the part of school they never put on the brochure. They tell you it's all about preparing you for the future, shaping young minds, building character, filling you with knowledge. Sounds inspiring, doesn't it? But if you peel back the shiny motivational posters and look at what's really going on, you realize the place isn't a temple of learning at all. It's a dress rehearsal for the big circus outside. The world beyond those walls is just a bigger stage with brighter lights and fancier props. And school is where they train you to hit your marks without asking who wrote the script. From the very first day, they start with the warm-up act, schedules. You get a timetable with exact times for everything. When to sit, when to walk, when to eat, even when you're allowed to use the bathroom. Bells ring, doors slam, teachers wave their arms, and you learn that your life is a series of little boxes to be filled, checked, and moved through. They call it organization, but what it really teaches is that somebody else always decides where you need to be. Sound familiar? That's because one day you'll be filling out time cards and punching clocks, and you'll already know the music to that dance. They're not just preparing you for life, they're preparing you for the waiting room of life. Look at the way they handle authority. There's a principal at the top, assistant principals below, a layer of teachers, and finally the students, stacked like a bureaucratic sandwich. Every decision comes down the chain of command, and every request has to climb back up. You learn early that the person with the clipboard wins. They call it structure, but it's really an introduction to the pecking order you'll see in offices, companies, and boardrooms. You think you're learning about history or science, but really you're getting a master class in how to smile at the boss while silently wondering how they got the job in the first place. And the language they use is priceless. Words like policy, procedure, standard, they sound so official, but half the time they mean because we said so. Want to question the policy? Fill out a form. Want to change the procedure? Take it up with a committee that meets once every century. By the time you graduate, you've mastered the art of nodding at nonsense without spraining your neck. Perfect training for those endless staff meetings where someone explains a new rule nobody understands but everyone obeys. Homework is another perfect preview of the working world. After spending all day at school, they send you home with more work and call it practice. Practice for what? For taking your job home with you, of course. They want you comfortable with the idea that your free time isn't really yours. You get used to spending your evenings finishing assignments instead of living your life, and one day you'll call that overtime, and pretend it's normal. And they grade you on it, just like a manager who evaluates your performance and then tells you to improve your team spirit, while you quietly weep into a spreadsheet. Even the cafeteria is a sneak preview of the break room. You stand in line for food you didn't choose at a time you didn't set, surrounded by people you didn't invite. You get exactly 20 minutes to shovel something edible into your face before the bell rings, and then you're back to work. Sound like any lunch hour you've ever heard about. The only difference is that in the real world, the pizza isn't shaped like a rectangle, but the lesson is clear. Eat fast, don't complain, and get back to your station. They even teach you how to celebrate the tiniest victories. Remember those gold stars and certificates of achievement. Perfect attendance, honor roll, student of the month. They hand out little paper trophies to keep you motivated for doing what you were already supposed to do. Later, you'll call them employee of the month, plaques or performance bonuses, but the joke is the same. It's a reward for staying inside the lines. You're not learning to love knowledge. You're learning to chase approval like a hamster chasing a shiny pellet. Then there's the big event everyone pretends is about education, standardized testing, those endless sheets of bubbles and number 2 pencils. It's not about what you know. It's about how well you can follow directions under pressure. Sit quietly, fill the bubbles, no talking, no creativity, no thinking outside the box, because the box is sacred. They don't care if you understand the material. They care if you can play the game exactly as instructed. Later, when you're filling out tax forms or compliance reports, you'll feel a strange sense of déjà vu. Haven't I done this before? Yes, you have, with Scantron sheets and a sharpened pencil, and don't forget the social lessons. School is a living laboratory for navigating cliques, gossip, and politics. You learn who to impress, who to avoid, and how to survive group projects where one person does all the work while everyone else signs their name. That's not just teenage drama. That's a dry run for office politics, company hierarchies, and those delightful team building exercises where you build a tower out of paper clips while secretly plotting each other's downfall. The names change, the stakes get higher, but the game stays the same. Even gym class is part of the training. It's not really about fitness. It's about competition and performance. They make you run laps, climb ropes, and dodge balls while someone with a whistle keeps score. It's a preview of performance reviews, sales quotas, and quarterly targets. You don't just play, you compete, because life is apparently one long scoreboard. And if you're not naturally athletic, you learn the art of pretending to care while strategically staying near the back of the line. That skill comes in handy when someone asks for volunteers at a meeting. Graduation is the grand finale, the big circus scene. Doff. They put you in a cap and gown, play dramatic music, and hand you a piece of paper that says you're ready for the next act. Everyone claps like you've discovered electricity, but all you've really done is prove you can sit through years of bells, tests, and paperwork without running for the hills. They call it a commencement, which sounds like the start of something new, but it's really a continuation. The same rules, the same routines. just a different building with slightly more comfortable chairs. And the beauty of the whole operation is that most people never question it. They think it's all about education, but it's about acclimation. You're not being prepared for a world of free thinkers and bold adventurers. You're being trained to function in a world of deadlines, bosses, and polite nodding. By the time you enter the so-called real world, you already know how to wait for permission, how to sit through boredom, how to chase approval, and how to pretend that the system makes sense. You know how to fill the bubbles, follow the rules, and laugh at the right moments. You're ready for the big circus because you've been practicing your routine since kindergarten. That's the punchline hiding in plain sight. School isn't a launching pad for imagination. It's a rehearsal for conformity dressed up as education. And once you spot the joke, you can't help but laugh, because the trick only works if you don't see it coming.